Greetings and salutations, friends! Welcome to another glorious day here at the Tango Hotel. And today, my friends, we will be discussing the closed beta of Diablo IV. All the things we loved, all the things we hated, problems we foresee in the future, and the potential amazingness that is this game. I had a lot of fun playing this game. I no-lifed the living out of this game, and it was great. But that is not all. But that does not mean that it is all kittens and cute puppies. So let's dive right in. The first things we're going to talk about are the bad. Now, not everything in here is bad. This is just my general opinions about this stuff. And one of the first things I got to touch on is the level scaling. And it is bad-ish. I don't mind level scaling in general, mainly due to the fact that The Witcher 3 kind of moved me away from the opinion that level scaling is always bad. And the reason is because in Witcher 3, the level scaling was such that if mobs would be lower level than you, then instead of them being insignificant in experience and difficulty, they would be leveled up to a minimum of 5 levels lower than you. So they still gave you a little bit of experience and they still gave you a little bit of challenge. In Diablo's 4 case, it seems like if you're not moving on the power curve of gear that allows you to ascend to the next level, then you will fall behind as the mobs level up with you and they become more powerful. And if you're not on that curve, then you could feel left behind. And even if you are on that curve, you never really get this feeling that you're becoming the godlike being that the Diablo power fantasy usually encapsulates. And that could be bad in many cases. Now, the wizard is extremely OP because of certain build types you can do, and I'm sure the barbarian will be too at some point, hopefully. But right now, when you play the barbarian, it does not feel that way. But it feels like the wizard, mine was able to, once I reached a certain point in the build, my ice build, I was able to melt everything and I could not die. And my cooldowns were always off cooldown. It was absolutely insane. You'll see it in the gameplay that's playing in the background. It's unbelievable. And so this is moving on to our next thing, next to the level scaling, is that the wizard is absolutely insanely overpowered. And I don't know if this is due to the fact that this is the way it's supposed to be, or that they didn't properly anticipate how the community was going to essentially break their skill trees. I have seen lightning wizards that could kill some of the in-game quote-unquote, level 25 bosses in like a few seconds, whereas it took me longer than a few seconds, but I was unkillable in that time with the ice ult, with the conjure spell, the freeze spell, and the shield spell. I was essentially a god, and it's fun. It's really, really fun. And it kind of concerns me because it feels like my build was almost completely done at level 25, and then the rest of up to level 70 or 90 or whatever the max level is going to be is just going to be refining that build, getting some more talents that make it even better, and just filling out the gear with better stats. So that is kind of a concern. The barb definitely feels underpowered. Now, Blizzard has addressed this. The Diablo devs have stated that, at different points in time in the game, some classes are going to be more OP than others and feel like they're stronger than others. What I assume they mean by that is that all we have to do is wait until after level 25, and maybe the barbarian will pick up a little bit once you can refine the build a little bit more. One of the things that really concerned me, seemed to be almost no cooldown reduction like there was with the wizard on the barbarian. So a lot of my cooldowns couldn't be finagled in a way that I could, make them cool down a lot faster. Whereas on the wizard, once I could break the cooldown mechanic, it was on. It was absolutely insane. Also, one of my biggest concerns, the thing that I have the most problem with about Diablo 4, the thing that I am worried the most about, is that after doing every single dungeon in the game, I can say without a doubt, there is, at least in Act 1, there is absolutely no reason to go to a dungeon if you do not want the reward of the legendary affix. And the reason I say that is because there are like 4 or 5 dungeon types, and there's like 4 or 5 variations on those dungeon types. They are very, very, very repetitive. They get very, very, very boring because of how repetitive they are. And the loot in the dungeon is meh at best. It's basically rando loot table with lots of mobs. And the bosses are extremely repetitive. They're reused. To be fair, though, in one of the dungeons I did run into the Butcher, which was amazing. I almost died on my hardcore character. It was absolutely terrifying. And every single dungeon has a keying aspect to it. where the boss or the next part of the dungeon is behind a locked door and you have to go do a thing to unlock the door, either kill all the mobs in the area or grab a thingamadoo and then put it on a statue-madoo, something along those lines, or hit some kind of mechanical thing and then go back to the door and it's there. This is stupid and it gets old really, really, really quick. It's fine for some dungeons, and I don't understand why it's in every single one, but it was bothering me at the end, and I did every single dungeon that I could come across. So the dungeons themselves are extremely repetitive, and I don't even really understand this because Diablo 2 had random everything. Blizzard, what are you doing? Diablo 2 was random everything. Every dungeon was random. Rifts were random, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't pay much attention to Diablo 3 rifts, so I don't really know how random they were and how many they were reused, but come on, dude. We have AI, we have all kinds of crazy shit that you could use to randomize these things, and holy crap, they're not. It's mind-blowingly bad. Now, there is a shining light in the heavens for this, and that some of the dungeons, many of them, do have a little bit of uniqueness to them in the fact that they are usually not the same exact layout, but it has a little story element. In most of them, there's a reason behind why the dungeon is the way it is and the mobs that are in there, and you can find like little letters that have audio logs that go with them that will tell you the story about the dungeon, but it's very sparse, and the repetitive design takes most of the exploration out of it. That the little bitty audio log, like the 1, 2, or maybe 3 of them that are there, or the little bit of lore notes that are there, are not enough to make me want to go into every single dungeon and do it, because it's just not fun once you've done it 20 times. And most every quest inside the dungeons that you get from outside the dungeons can be farmed well before the boss, usually. A lot of times, almost every quest was not to kill the boss or to get something that was behind the boss. It was usually something in the first or second area before the boss. Many of the quests you don't even have to complete the dungeon to actually do, so there's another reason to not do the dungeons after you've gotten the quest done. And then there are the cellar designs, which is another place I don't understand where Blizzard fell flat on their face on this one. It really does feel they just weren't trying, because the cellars are also repetitive, and they're even more so because they are tiny. Why would you not have them randomized? Why would you not have 50 or 100 different designs? And it's not just the fact that the cellars themselves aren't randomized, it's the fact that the things that happen in the cellars are also really annoyingly repetitive. There are only like 4 or 5, maybe 6 different types of encounters you have, and then there's like 5 or 6 variations on that. And after going into every single cellar that I could find, I can tell you, just like with the dungeons, there's no real reason to actually go in there aside from just pure unadulterated curiosity, which most likely will not be satisfied by the experience. Now, what you may get is, because the encounters are random, you may get a really cool one where you have to defend a bunch of people, and that might net you some loot. But again, it's random, and there's no guarantee that it's going to be good loot. And there's the rare occasion that you might get a loot goblin, but again, is the extremely rare chance that you'll get a loot goblin worth exploring every single one of those you come across. And I would say the answer is probably no, it's not. And this is another place where it feels like Blizzard is just kind of dropping the ball, where I don't understand why we can't randomize these things. Have a bunch of different templates and just rando it. You know what I'm saying? Make it to where every new thing is just different, and it randomizes all the little elements. Now, maybe that's what is going on, and they just don't have enough elements. Maybe it's that it is supposed to be random, but they don't have the randomizer done yet, and so the beta just has a few templates, and maybe they're waiting for, you know, the full release to actually show us what's going on. Because I can tell you right now that when we play on open beta weekend, I am not going to be running nearly as many dungeons as I was on closed beta weekend, because I ran all of them that I could before the time ran out on both my barb and my wizard. When I play the necromancer this weekend, the only dungeons I am going to be running are for the affixes that I want, because there is literally no reason to do so outside of mob density. So maybe when I get max level with my necromancer and I finish the act, then maybe I'll go run a few dungeons for the lulz so that I can be a god among men and just have a lot of fun with it. Sure, maybe. But outside of that, there's not much reason other than farming gold and potential legendaries, which may or may not drop. And it just feels like the only reason that you would go in there is because of the mob density. Now, next on the list is the map. From the zoomed out view, definitely appears empty. Some people have chided it for this. I have mixed feelings about the way the map looks. I actually quite like the fact that it's less is more kind of deal. Although I do wish that you could turn on and off where the dungeons are located on the thing instead of them just being little white dots when you're zoomed all the way out. But that's beside the point. I do like how clean the map looks. But another thing that's gonna probably bother me is the fact that things like the statues of Lilith are not on the map for you to see. So you can't re-find them easily on your other characters if you want to do it by looking at the characters that have already been discovered. There's a lot of stuff like that. A lot of the events only appear on the map when you are near them, and I think that once you've discovered them, it should appear on your map, or you should be able to toggle it on and off to see all of these things. Giving the player the choice would probably be a good idea in this instant. And I really do think that collection aspect of the like statues of Lilith and all the other stuff is going to get real old real quick once seasons come out and I have to re-level a character, and if I want all the cool stats and all the stuff from that, then I have to go to every statue of Lilith where it is. Even if they randomize it, especially if they randomize it, it's just going to be tedious as hell, especially trying to level up the renown of each major area, because there is a lot of renown to get. I got my renown up to level 3 for my hardcore characters, and that allowed me to get 2 extra talent points on my barbarian when I made them, and it was pretty awesome. But having to do that every single season is probably going to be tedious to the point where you're probably not going to do it, and if you do, it's going to be one of those things where you knock it out super quick while you're trying to level up your character, and then you just never mess with it again. Or you do it in the most efficient area, whichever act that is, and then you just don't worry about the rest of it. That's kind of how I foresee that going. One thing that does really bother me is about the town portal system, which I really like, by the way, and the fact that you can teleport town portal from any location to a waypoint that you've discovered is really good. I just wish there was a way to open the town portal that you could select a different place to go other than the main city. That way it would have a list of options and it would show you all the things that they offer, because when you go to the map and you hover over one of the waypoints that's not the main city or even in the main city, it tells you all the shops that are at that waypoint. Why can there not be a drop-down menu on the teleport thing? It's like, well, I know I want to go here, so I'm going to select this, boom, and when I TP, that's where I'm going to go. Easy peasy. So with all that being said, my true concern with Diablo IV in its current state that we see it is the fact that it's not going to be able to keep the player base engaged over long periods of time, even through seasonal content, due to the repetitive nature of the way they've made the game. We're about to talk about some of the good stuff, and some of those are like how the combat feels good and all that, but that's only going to go so far to keep people engaged in a game, especially once you beat the story a dozen times. Nobody's going to care. And it's the same thing that happened with Diablo 3. The season would come out, I would level up a character, I'd run the rifts, I'd get bored, and I'd stop playing, and I'd wait till another season came out that I wanted to play. And I didn't play every season. And the reason was because it was just repetitive and boring after a while, especially once I had beat Diablo 3's story dozens of times, which is one of the reasons why I liked Reaper of Souls, is because it added the bounty system, which changed it up and made it fresh. But that freshness only lasted for so long because there was really nothing else to keep you engaged. And I'm sure I'm echoing many a different creator with the same problem and concern, in the fact that this may be a sign that it will be a fun game. It'll have a great campaign. Every season will be kind of fun and fresh. But in between those seasons, after all the fun and freshness wears off, everybody's going to leave and go do something else, because it's just not as engaging because of the repetitiveness of everything and the lack of depth. Now, we haven't seen the end game, so we don't know how the Paragon trees that are super insane are going to really affect how the game plays and how it evolves toward the end game. It may be the greatest thing since sliced bread, as Blizzard has taken all the stuff it's learned from the ARPGs it's made, all the stuff that PoE has done, and all the other ARPGs since Diablo 3 have done, and they distill that down into a Blizzard product where you have this highly polished version of an ARPG, and Blizzard is known for doing this. I mean, look at WoW. WoW is a distillation of all the great ideas and cutting out the fat and the fluff that was EQ and Ultima Online and all the other MMOs before WoW. So this is something they've definitely done before. You know, many of their games reflect this. They tried to do it with Hero of the Storm. It didn't work out with Hero of the Storm, but they still tried it, and it was pretty good for what it was. They did it with Overwatch, and they've done it with other games as well. So we don't exactly know what's going to happen with this. A lot of the repetitiveness could be the fact that they don't have the rando generator nonsense that I was referring to online yet, or it's not perfected, and so they basically just put in what they had at the moment, and then when the game comes out in June, that it will have less repetitiveness and more variety. We just don't know. So now, my dudes, on to the good stuff. The first thing I got to say, above all else, is that the game is fun. Oh my God, it was fun. So very, very fun. Now, it could just be the fact that it's a new game, and so new game hype, and the fact that I know life the living out of it was probably part of it. It was my birthday. That was probably also a part of it. So there's a lot of, feelings about that. It could just be that it was just new game hype, right? Okay. But some of the good stuff is that the game feels good. The combat feels very, very good and visceral. When you hit enemies with powerful spells, it looks like they feel it. They stagger, they do all kinds of other animations, even sometimes while they're still trying to attack you. So it might not interrupt their attacks, but at least their models show that they're aware that you are doing things to them, and they're not just standing there taking it, all the time. Even powerful mobs, boss mobs, sometimes will shrug a little bit when you hit them with something really, really powerful, a crit or an overpower or something like that. And the Barbarian especially feels absolutely amazing for the combat. I didn't play the Rogue, so I have no interest in playing the Rogue whatsoever. But both the Wizard and the Barbarian were really good. The Barbarian specifically, like I said, was really good. The Arsenal system, I'm really, really liking it. The Barb did feel a little underpowered, but the combat in and of itself was pretty good. So once I got to a point where I had some kind of build where I was doing some kind of good damage, it felt a lot better. Although it never really got to the point where my ultimate Wizard build was working nearly as well. The gear and the stats are numerous and varied, if a little, route. Damage to close range enemies, damage to far away enemies, damage to CC'd enemies, damage to frozen, stuff like that, as well as stats and thorns and just all this normal stuff you expect. So there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of good stuff, and I really, really like how much stuff there is. And what that means is that you're going to have a lot of ability to, refine the gear that you have. And the way that they're allowing you to do that is you can upgrade the gear to increase the stats within the ranges that they roll. You can re-roll certain stats on the gear, which is really, really awesome. You can attach affixes to the epic gear to make it legendary, which is really freaking cool. And and you can even steal those affixes off of them and put them on something else, which is also really, really cool. And it means that you're going to have to constantly be farming legendaries to refine your build. Some of the legendaries I had, especially on my Wizard, man, were build defining. The fact that I had the ability to have 2 Frost Novas on just a longer cooldown was insane. And this went into every part of my build. Half the legendaries that I had made my build what it was. And it's really, really cool to have that, to have a little bit of luck as well as itemization on your end and the decisions that you make to affect how your spec actually works and whether or not it's going to be really good, really bad, or just somewhere in between. Now, this is kind of good and kind of bad as well, because if you get a lot of bad luck and you don't get a lot of cool affixes, then your build could be severely underpowered for what it is. And not only that, what it's going to do is you're going to get lower level gear. Like, let's say you get a level 20 item that has really cool affixes on it, and all your gear is like level 20, but now you're level 40 or 50, and you're not finding the legendaries to replace them, and you can't pull them off of it because you've already done those things. And so you could end up having super low level gear that will keep you locked in this low level gear because you need the affixes for your build to work properly. And I feel that might be a problem. One of the best things that the game does by far, heads and above everything else, and I can honestly say this is a 100% good thing, there is no bad to it at the moment, is that respecking is easy, it is fluid, and it only costs gold, and it is amazing. You can respec fully and completely get back all your talent points, or you can do it one at a time and it costs about the same amount of gold. And you can do it on the fly, out in the field, however you want to do it, it can be done. And it is very, very good. The only issue is that because certain abilities require you to have certain points in the tree before you're able to get that ability, it could be a little wonky, meaning you have to take a bunch of points out of lower in the tree just to be able to move some stuff around up at the top. It'd be nice if you could save it and, move some stuff around without actually having to, undo the stuff at the bottom, because it costs extra gold to do that. The only thing that I worry about is that the devs made a comment that it would be easier to roll another character or another tune than respec at max level. This would be 100% bad. There would be no good to this. The whole thing about making your spec matter so your decisions matter, making it not easy to respec, it's a fun concept, and it's okay, but it sucks really bad. And anybody who played Diablo 2 back in the day knows this, because if you messed up your build and did the wrong things, then you had to literally re-roll another character. I had like 4 fire sorceresses, I think, because I didn't build them correctly. Almost all of them at level 99. So yeah, no, I want to respec, and I just want to be able to do it whenever, however I want. I don't want there to be too much barrier. Now, the gold cost is fine. If there's a nominal gold cost, that is great, because that's like an inflation sink that prevents, gold inflation and all that. And I'm perfectly okay with that, as long as they keep it on level with how much your gold you're getting. Now, making it super expensive at max level would be okay if it's like you need a full respec, and it's like super expensive, and you're like, oh man, I don't want to spend that much gold. And maybe they made it to where you could do a little quest, and then you do that quest, and then it lowers the expense. If you're at max level, maybe that would be okay. It still wouldn't be nominal, but I would be more okay with that than what the devs said about it'd be easier to roll another tune than to respec at max level. That would be 100% bad. There is no, hands down, there's no argument. That is bad. Bad game design, 100%. All right, so next on the list is quests. Now, the quests I really like, and this goes along with the story in and of itself. The quests are really, really good, and it's carried a lot by the voice acting and the writing, as well as the implementation. Now, a lot of them are a little silly, a lot of them are like low-level stuff, which I really appreciate, because it's the low-level stuff, the humanizing stuff, that really can draw you into the story. They all feel like it adds a little bit more of the story to the world. They tell you a little bit about this place, or tell you a little bit about this place, or tell you about the people there. And so far, it's really good. But the problem is that the main actual story suffers from Blizzard Diablo-itis. And what does that mean? That means the story starts out really, really small, which is really, really good. At the beginning of Diablo 4, you literally get drugged by a bunch of cultists who ask you to save them from demon hordes in a dungeon that's just nearby, which is really, really awesome. It's a very small story, but it almost immediately ramps up to world-ending celestial proportions, where it's not just the earth is involved, it's heaven and hell, and it's just within Act 1, it just ramps up almost immediately, and it kind of puts a lot of these little stories that are around the world or around the starting area, it kind of puts them to shame. I still did them, and I loved them, but it's kind of like that ludonarrative dissonance, I think that's what the word is, or the phrase is, where it's like these things don't really add up, because if the world was really in so much trouble as it feels like with the main story, why are you doing any of this other stuff? Other people can do that. You got to focus on the big baddie, so the world doesn't end. Because while you're going off and getting a hammer for the wolf tribe or the bear tribe, or you're going over here to frickin' help some dude get some money from some jeweler that stole all his shit, Lilith is going to take over the world, or get a key to hell and do some craziness that's going to obliterate everything. It's very, very weird that it works like that. Now, to be fair, it's really neither good or bad, depending on the implementation. I loved the way the story went in Act 1. Like I said, it's just the fact that it ramped up so quickly, and it may end up being bad in the long run. We just don't know. It depends on how the rest of the story pans out. And because of those small quests seeming insignificant, you know what I'm saying? Other big things is that the story can only go in so many directions the way it's set up, because it instantly ramps up to the, end of the world scenario that every Diablo has. As in, is Lilith really the bad guy, or is she the savior? Like it's sort of kind of hinting at. Is the angel really the bad guy, or is he really a good guy? Because he did kill his son, but was it for a good reason? Is there any truth to this, or are they both bad, or are they both good? And there's only so much intrigue you can get out of it in this point. And regardless of where it goes, it feels like it won't be much of a surprise in the long run, because there's only so many directions you can go. Either they're both good, they're both bad, or one of them is bad and one of them is good, or if they do too much gray in between, then it'll just be kind of a wash, unless there's some kind of huge mystery box they're setting up to reveal toward the end, where some crazy ish happens, where they reveal more of the prophecy that they talked about, and no one really knew how it was going to unfold, neither Inaris the angel nor Lilith the demon. You know, I could be wrong, of course, and they can do whatever they want, but I seriously doubt that it's going to be too crazy. It might be. Blizzard has been known to make some really banger stories, so all I can hope is that the rest of the acts are just as good as the first, because I would love that. Diablo 3 does not give me very much hope because the first act felt really, really good, and then the rest of the story just kind of felt like it was, what the hell is going on? And the Reaper of Souls story wasn't much better, in my opinion. And that's just how I felt about it. It was just kind of meh. It's the end of the world as we know it. Let's go kill some demons. All that being said, like, the voice acting is top notch and it really pulls you into the story. There was only one instance where it felt like an actor was phoning it in, and it was the high priestess lady when she was giving priests you met at the very beginning a blessing. And I commented on that, and it blew me away that after she did the blessing, she looks at you, and then the voice, the emotion in the voice actor came back, and it was like, oh, she was voice acting so well that she was pretending that the priestess was just reading off of a script because she was doing this blessing that she's done a million times. And it hit me that was absolutely amazing voice acting, and it blew me away. So that was really good. And the grim darkness of Diablo is absolutely 100% back, baby. It feels really dark, really gritty, really good. And overall, I enjoyed my experience in the beta, and I cannot wait to try out the Necromancer. That's right, boys. And we'll be doing that on Friday. Yeah, so very soon. I do worry about the end game because it remains this repetitive, and it won't take long for people to drop it out of boredom. So that is something I'm sure, again, that will be echoed by many a people, and we're all concerned. But I am hopefully optimistic, and I hope to see you in the open beta this weekend, and I hope to see you on 6/6 when the game launches. Until then, my dudes, it's been a pleasure. It's been an honor, and I'll see you next time, boys. Peace out.